those fatty clays get moisture, they swell up, and all of a sudden you've got a 3-inch bow in the middle of that wall. Or like my lumber salesman up the street, he, I think, had his mud sill sitting 2.5 inches cantilevered off the side of his top of wall.
Because the wall was pushed in?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we really have problematic soils from that. We don't have any sandy stuff around here, and there is some rock and a lot of springs in certain areas, but not in my neighborhood.
If you guys are faced with just like an impossible building site, with a large slope draining onto where the house is going to be, like, are there things you can do either with coatings or French drains on the lot that can deal with these problems that are very difficult to solve? You can't level the mountain behind your house, right?
No, you create a new lower place that isn't your foundation away from your foundation. A natural French drain or dry creek bed look with a French drain below it is how we usually solve that. So you have to integrate it into the landscape and create a better path for the surface water to drain away. Anything on below grade stuff, we've had 4 and 5 sump backup systems, 2 inside, 3 exterior sumps. I mean, there are a lot of ways to throw money at it to solve it, but I always say the best way is the no maintenance way. So you solve it with grade first, and that's been our method.
What do you think, Lance?
I agree with him. Absolutely. If you can redirect the water on the exterior, I mean, you're 90% there. He's talking about damages, though, too. I mean, something has to be done with those walls that are bowing. That's a tear out and a redo, right?
Unless the piering guy is going to, support the house independent of the wall, I guess, but you still need to resist the soil pressure to keep it from caving in the basement, right?
Exactly. So excavating is the only thing you can do in that case.
What's your soil type like, Lance? Do you have problems with clay soils?
So yeah, I'm in the Midwest, and it is more clay-like. It's probably very similar to Travis. Yeah, and we have the same group of guys, peer guys, that they stay pretty busy. We have subsidence issues too, where they've had mining that's taken place, and I mean, not in our neighborhood or not anywhere near where I live, but that has been an issue, subsidence.
We were talking ahead of the program that the COVID outbreak has meant folks are using their basements and for schooling their kids, or Travis was saying that that's your office. I don't know if that's normal or if that's a result of the outbreak, but what advice do all of you folks have for people who are trying to make their basement space more functional, drier, healthier, so they're not putting a lot of moisture in their house? Travis, why don't you go first, if you don't mind? I saw you just turned off your mic, but
I'm happy to go first. I think that we have 2 different approaches. If you have a partially finished basement that already has moisture issues, that's one set of solutions. If this is a starting point and you need that found space to make your home office work, or a home gym, or even just an entertaining space to get away, the starting point is always the same: clean and dry. So usually for our clients, we'll tell them, we got to get your stuff out of here to see what we're working with, because it's always, the Christmas tree, the kids' clothes that they outgrew 30 years ago, every assignment mom saved, all that stuff has to go so you can see what you're working with. Once you have it truly clean and you can see what you're up against, then we always start with, let's plan for the worst. Even if it's never been wet, the least we can do is put up a DRYLOK coating to solve any moisture that would get into our wall system. Let's plan for a floating floor, because none of the slabs in my area have any insulation under them. An insulated slab is a luxury. To make that basement a comfortable space, we're usually insulating the floor, and then the floating floor above that, the framed walls within that area, we're essentially ready to start to make it a comfortable finished space. If you have a problem that's existing, we usually look first to solve that from the exterior, and then it's the same steps on the interior.
Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. Let me just say that when someone contacts me and says that they have a wet basement or a damp basement, and I need to find out how damp, right? So, putting 4 mil plastic in areas of concern, taping those down with duct tape, or using a rubber mat to find out just how much moisture comes through that surface is number one. And if we find out that it's discolored, it's not really, there's really not much moisture there on the surface, then we know how to handle that. But if it's really severe, then we have to refer them to guys like Mike or Travis to do other things. But 90% of the time, waterproofing the walls, waterproofing the floor, repairing cracks, it works. Our product is tintable. So if someone prefers a different color other than white or gray, we can make light to medium shades. It's pretty versatile. And
so instead of your improvised office being bare concrete, now it actually looks like a painted wall to your coworkers, right? It's just like
Absolutely.
This is
Absolutely. Yeah. And not a lot of people know that it can be tinted, and we can make a number of colors. It's easily done.
We got a good question here. I'm going to jump into it. What, if anything, can be done with a pre-1900s brick over fieldstone? I've been told these need vapor movement through the brick to let the lime mortar self-heal. Yeah, some efflorescence can repoint. I don't know whether that will do the job. Anyone want to take a stab at that? That's a hard thing, right? Those walls are super porous.
That's a mic problem. I don't.
The only thing that I couldn't hear what Travis said. When I've approached those old foundations that are, brick or block or stone or a combination of those, whether with lime mortar or even just regular Portland cement mortar, where we're getting a lot of moisture in, because of the concern about particularly old clay bricks, we get a lot of those here. And if you start playing around with the inside and sealing them, we end up without that moisture transfer and have had problems where we just increase the spalling and breaking up and crumbling. So just bite the bullet, excavate on the outside, and then waterproof it from the outside. And we just
I've excavated fieldstone walls, and it seems like at any time they could collapse, right? It's kind of a dodgy exercise.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
you just got to be careful because you can push them in.
It's not something. Right? It's not a DIY project.
No.
There's something to be said for working in sections and limiting that risk.
Mm-hmm.
If you dig out the entire, side of a house, yeah, you've really taken away all the support that the soil is offering that wall. But if you isolate your excavation to a 4 or 6 foot area, you're really limiting that. If you think about it in terms of like a window header that's carrying the entire second floor loaded roof with a couple of 2x10s, yeah, that's a reasonable span. That's a good way to dig out, address, and put gravel and backfill. The problem is it's nearly impossible to roll out drain tile in that space and then mate it up without creating other issues. So it makes it very slow and challenging, but it is safer to do it that way.
There is a detail that Building Science Corporation did on several projects when they were trying to figure out with the old rubble wall foundations what could be done. And what they had figured out was putting a membrane on the inside, which usually you wouldn't want to put plastic inside a foundation before you finish it because it can cause all sorts of other problems. But they put a membrane on the inside. They ran that down to, and they had a channel cut where water could drain down below the slab. Then they put high density spray foam over the top of that. Same on the floor. They put a mat down and then they put high density spray foam over that. So they basically encapsulated the whole inside of the foundation with spray foam. And then they built in from that face. That way water could come through the foundation. It would all be drained down below the slab, managed there. and then the inside was completely impermeable, separated from the outside. Very expensive, but they found that it were very effective on homes in the test cases that they did.
And I think having a flood event is more expensive than fixing, doing that kind of work ahead of the occupancy.
Yeah.
I want to